This is a live look at North Minneapolis. For the second time in a week, a shooting by a federal agent is leading to unrest in the city.
No! No! Shit!
A massive ICE and FBI raid erupted from a Minneapolis border area shooting that has been framed as one of the deadliest law enforcement confrontations in recent U.S. history. What began with a controversial federal officer opening fire in the street has spiraled into claims of 24 dead, the Somali mayor allegedly pleading guilty, and tensions so high that even the U.S. military has been discussed. What happened next will shock you to the core.
An officer of ours acted quickly and defensively shot to protect himself and the people around him.
It all began when an ICE agent fired his weapon at a vehicle during a high-profile immigration enforcement operation, killing 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good in broad daylight. Federal authorities immediately framed the shooting as self-defense, claiming the agent feared for his life as the vehicle moved toward him. What appeared to be a single fatal encounter quickly ignited widespread protests, political division, and renewed scrutiny over how far federal agents can go when using force.
J.D. Vance reacted to this new video on X saying, "Many of you have been told this law enforcement officer wasn't hit by a car, wasn't being harassed, and murdered an innocent woman. The reality is that his life was endangered and he fired in self-defense."
Government statements presented the video as conclusive proof, urging the public against questioning the agent's actions. But in Minneapolis, the footage raised more questions than answers. City leaders and residents saw an officer stepping into danger, deadly force used in a crowded civilian space, and a federal response that seemed rushed to close ranks. As protests spread, the shooting became a broader confrontation over power, accountability, and transparency.
Back off, guys.
This city's sanctuary policies had transformed into a revolving door, releasing individuals with documented threats to public welfare straight back onto the streets. Verified cases involving heinous crimes against minors, sexual assault, exploitation, violations that shake your faith in the system. These suspects vanished into communities where agents would spend months hunting them down. What you're about to witness began with a single gunshot that triggered a federal probe exposing a sprawling criminal empire. At 3:12 a.m., unmarked federal SUVs killed their headlights and glided toward a 14-story hotel like predators closing on prey. Within heartbeats, every exit point was locked down, elevator systems were remotely disabled, and armed tactical units flooded the stairwells. Doors exploded inward as high-powered flashlights sliced through blackened hallways and agents barked tactical commands. Occupants were forced prone, rooms systematically cleared.
Back up! Back up! Get out of the fucking room! Back up!
Shut the fuck up!
43 minutes. That's all it took for ICE, Homeland Security, and DEA operatives to detain 236 illegal immigrants, of which 180 from Somali. Agents pulled 127 counterfeit passports from hiding spots, burner phones by the dozen, and cash bundles concealed inside ceiling tiles. Then search teams discovered 39 firearms, loaded pistols, and military-grade rifles. In maintenance closets and reinforced luggage, they seized cocaine and fentanyl packaged for commercial distribution. Currency counts surged past $4 million.
ICE, the DEA, and Border Patrol agents joined a local task force during a drug bust. This was
Weaponry, narcotics, and capital revealed this hotel was functioning as a fortified distribution center. By sunrise, seized phones kept vibrating with incoming calls, encrypted texts and delivery schedules frozen mid-transmission. DEA digital forensics specialists cross-referenced phone numbers, GPS coordinates, and aliases extracted from disposable devices. What initially resembled random trafficking incidents began coalescing into a massive criminal network. At the apex sat two names that shattered expectations. Khalif Nurelmi, 45, Somali-born jurist with an unblemished public persona, and Hoden Elanur, 42, licensed attorney specializing in immigration and criminal defense. On the surface, they were community leaders. Beneath it, federal investigators believed they were masterminds who had invested nearly 10 years constructing a clandestine pipeline. Somali migrants were trafficked into America, furnished with fraudulent documentation, and integrated as transportation specialists, safe house security, and drug couriers. Compliance was guaranteed through manufactured debt, direct threats, and leverage against relatives overseas. Their professional positions provided unprecedented insulation as judicial access delayed search warrants, legal maneuvers stalled investigations, and bribes flowed discreetly. Border personnel, municipal police, even high-ranking law enforcement officials were suspected of compromise.
Undercover officers found nearly 300 pounds of meth inside a vehicle. In another one nearby, more than 600 pounds stuffed still in the bed of a truck, part of a larger investigation that came together in a matter of days.
Narcotics traveled northward from Mexican and Colombian sources, then radiated outward from Minneapolis across state boundaries. FBI analysts connected the network to at least 24 gang-related homicides. Federal court documents revealed direct connections to Minneapolis's Somali-born mayor, who allegedly provided political protection, delayed enforcement responses, and profited financially. His eventual guilty plea validated that the network's shield extended to the highest echelons of municipal governance.
So this is, in totality, approximately $1 million worth of methamphetamine.
300 pounds of crystal meth. What's unique isn't just the amount of it, but how it was hidden.
This is one of the most unique smuggling methods that we have seen in recent memory.
Surveillance assets detected significant movement at Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport at 8:21 a.m., Khalif, and Hoden arrived at separate terminals, traveling light with fresh passports and one-way international flights. Zero public statements, zero legal representation. To federal agents monitoring every camera feed, the intention was unmistakable. They were attempting to flee. ICE and FBI tactical units sealed terminal sections, tracking both targets through facial recognition software. At 8:27 a.m., agents converged from multiple vectors. The apprehension lasted 22 seconds with zero resistance, just handcuffs clicking shut in full view of the departure concourse. With their capture, the network's protective barrier evaporated. Within hours, prosecutors authorized expanded warrants and financial trails were unlocked. At precisely 4:00 a.m., federal warrants activated across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, and Michigan. Over 1,200 federal agents mobilized simultaneously as FBI command centers synchronized real-time intelligence. ICE, DEA, and Homeland Security units operated as a unified force. The operation unfolded with military-grade precision across 6 states. The first breach in northern Minnesota detonated a reinforced entry point. Armed lookouts scattered, but flashbang grenades erupted, neutralizing resistance. Gunfire exploded in sharp, violent exchanges through confined corridors. 2 suspects were shot while resisting as one federal agent absorbed a shoulder wound. At 4:18 a.m. in Milwaukee's outskirts, a converted automotive facility transformed into a combat zone where a suspect opened fire from an elevated position. Agents returned suppressive fire, eliminating the threat before discovering drug shipments stacked ceiling high. They found cocaine bricks and fentanyl packages. In South Chicago at 4:37 a.m., simultaneous entries struck an apartment complex across 3 levels. Suspects fled through emergency stairwells and rooftops as one fired randomly through interior walls. Agents contained them systematically and initiated clearance operations. Rifles, handguns, and cash were extracted from wall cavities, ventilation shafts, and floor compartments. By daybreak, the magnitude was undeniable across 73 raid locations. Federal teams encountered defensive barriers, early warning systems, and weapons positioned for immediate deployment. 4 separate firefights ignited within 36 hours, as 9 cartel enforcers were eliminated and 2 federal agents sustained injuries but survived. Day 1 concluded with 412 suspects in custody, including over 260 confirmed cartel members.
The Department of Homeland Security says that during the past 5 weeks, 2,500 illegal immigrants have been arrested in Minneapolis.
Day 2 pushed total arrests beyond 640 individuals directly connected to interstate drug transport, armed enforcement, and money laundering cells. Transport convoys departed loaded with tons of cocaine, fentanyl, and methamphetamine. Safes were breached to reveal tens of millions in cash. Digital forensics teams cloned servers on site, freezing financial transaction ledgers. The danger intensified with proximity to elementary schools and residential zones where narcotics were stored adjacent to children's bedrooms. Federal command confirmed this was a hardened interstate cartel network prepared for sustained violence and embedded deeply inside America's heartland. Investigators began reconstructing what the network had accomplished. Financial records, encrypted databases, and witness accounts demonstrated the operation had functioned for nearly 10 years. What originated as small-scale smuggling evolved into industrial infrastructure where narcotics flowed northward from Mexico and Colombia, then distributed outward from Minneapolis like poison through veins. Conservative estimates placed hundreds of tons of narcotics entering America through this single network. Cocaine for velocity and profit, methamphetamine for territorial control, fentanyl for maximum devastation. Emergency department statistics showed overdose fatalities in key Minnesota counties had quadrupled across the decade. In specific neighborhoods, fentanyl-related deaths spiked over 300%. Within 3 years, violent crime shadowed the narcotics as homicides escalated and armed robberies became normalized. Territory disputes evolved into drive-by shootings and executions in parking structures and residential stairwells. Witnesses described how illegally trafficked migrants were forced into operational roles immediately upon arrival, operating transport vehicles or providing security for distribution sites. Once arrests stabilized, the investigation pivoted inward. The network had survived nearly a decade because elements of the system designed to destroy it had been compromised. Interrogations of mid-level operatives began aligning as names repeated across testimonies. Payment records matched banking transactions, and phone records connected officers to vehicles that should never have bypassed inspection protocols. Over 3 days, internal affairs units operated parallel to federal prosecutors. By week's end, 12 municipal police officers were arrested. Some had accepted cash, payments to ignore traffic violations, while others provided advance notification of planned raids. One officer confessed to personally escorting vehicles he knew contained narcotics under the pretense of routine patrol operations.
They've seized the drug in unexpected places, from luxury apartment buildings in the city to cars during traffic stops.
It's easy for them to shift from producing fentanyl and shipping fentanyl into the United States.
Then emerged a sitting police chief's name in federal documents. Investigators alleged he'd received regular financial compensation to redirect departmental resources and suppress internal complaints. Emails recovered from archived servers revealed deliberate interference in active investigations, as complaints were reclassified as administrative errors and evidence quietly disappeared. Financial audits exposed municipal officials who'd approved questionable contracts connected to shell corporations. Immigration consultants funneled clients directly into the network, while court clerks manipulated filing dates. Every minor favor added another layer to the cartel's protective shield. In closed-door prosecutor briefings, one term surfaced repeatedly: ecosystem. Entire departments were placed under federal oversight as pending criminal cases were reopened. By dismantling the internal protective barrier, investigators ensured the network couldn't regenerate. Distribution routes remained closed and replacement attempts failed. In the weeks following, Minneapolis began experiencing transformation as emergency sirens became less frequent and police helicopters disappeared from night skies.
This is what 500 pounds of marijuana, all packaged up and ready to distribute, looks like.
Federal analysts confirmed the drug flow had been interrupted. Within 30 days, overdose admissions in major Minnesota hospitals dropped nearly 40%. Federal prosecutors filed hundreds of indictments with charges encompassing narcotics trafficking, weapons violations, racketeering, human smuggling, money laundering, and corruption. Several cases were designated high-priority national security prosecutions, fast-tracked through federal court systems. For Khalif Nurelmi and Hoden Ilanur, the fall was absolute as assets froze, properties were seized, and bank accounts were drained. Families came forward, parents who'd lost children to overdoses, residents who'd fled neighborhoods consumed by violence, migrants trapped in systems they never understood until escape became impossible. Community leaders who'd spent years documenting patterns nobody would investigate finally saw their testimony validated in federal courtrooms. Neighborhood watch organizers, clergy members, and grassroots activists who'd filed hundreds of ignored reports became critical witnesses. Their persistent documentation, photographs of suspicious activity, logs of unexplained police response delays, records of meetings where concerns were dismissed, formed the foundation of prosecutorial timelines. Recovery centers reported unprecedented demand as individuals trapped in the distribution network sought exit pathways. Counselors described clients arriving with identical stories, promises of legitimate work, gradual coercion into criminal activity, and threats against family members who remained vulnerable in distant countries. Social workers navigated complex cases where victims were simultaneously witnesses, requiring protection while facing their own legal exposure.
The highway system that makes it easy. All the drugs come through here, stockpiled, and they're shipped all over the U.S., and then the money comes back and is stockpiled, and then they ship down.
Atlanta is effectively a warehouse.
It's a warehouse.
Federal investigators acknowledged the investigation's broader implications during congressional briefings. The Minneapolis network wasn't isolated. Similar structures operated in other mid-sized cities where oversight gaps and resource constraints created exploitable vulnerabilities. Task forces were deployed to Detroit, Nashville, and Columbus using the Minneapolis blueprint. The methodology was clear: identify corruption patterns, follow financial flows, and dismantle protective infrastructure before targeting distribution operations. Educational institutions began examining their role after universities discovered recruitment occurring on campuses. International student advisors received updated training on recognizing exploitation indicators. Financial aid offices implemented new verification protocols after discovering loan fraud schemes that funneled students into debt traps, making them desperate and vulnerable to criminal recruitment. The business community confronted uncomfortable realities as legitimate companies discovered their services had been exploited. Accounting firms, legal offices, and real estate agencies instituted enhanced due diligence procedures. Professional associations developed ethics guidelines addressing what to do when client behavior suggested criminal activity disguised as legitimate business. In legislative chambers, lawmakers drafted bills addressing systemic vulnerabilities the network had exploited. Stronger oversight requirements for municipal contracts, mandatory corruption reporting mechanisms, and protections for whistleblowers in law enforcement. The reforms acknowledged a harsh truth. The network succeeded not because systems failed to exist, but because existing systems weren't enforced until consequences became undeniable. For years, danger had moved quietly through courtrooms, neighborhoods, and highways, concealed behind professional titles and routine decisions nobody thought to question. Institutions erode gradually through one ignored warning, one delayed file, one compromised decision at a time. The network relied on the assumption that people in positions of authority could be trusted without verification. Corruption wears familiarity, hiding behind legal terminology, professional reputations, and closed-door meetings justified as standard procedure. When oversight weakens, power stops serving the public and begins protecting itself. The most destructive actors were those opening doors, delaying consequences, and silencing questions. Once the internal shield was removed, the network collapsed rapidly. Justice depends on vigilance, on refusing to accept silence as normal, and on having the courage to question authority when facts fail to align. When citizens disengage, corruption gains. Breathing room. The myth of untouchability was destroyed as the belief that power, status, or connections could shield criminal empires from accountability collapsed under the weight of evidence and enforcement.